All right, so first play we're going to look at, 2nd and 2, one of the Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick, Taylor Kyles here for CLNS Media, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, live on the CLNS Media Network, powered by Prize Picks, powered by Omaha Steaks, as always. And today, powered by a fun conversation about what the Patriots should do with some of their extension and cut candidates here heading into 2026. Obviously, we know Patriots made it all the way to Super Bowl 60 with this roster, but there's got to be moves to make. Some of the headliners being a Christian Gonzalez potential extension, what to do with Stephon Diggs' contract. So we'll get into all of that throughout the course of the show. But before we do have some Patriots news that has dropped over the last handful of days. And what was essentially known has now become official, and that is that Zach Core is taking over as the Patriots defensive coordinator full-time. He was essentially the interim last year after Terrell Williams went through some of his health issues and was sidelined due to cancer. He is cancer-free now, but they are moving him into a higher level role on the staff. High ranking is what they called it, essentially what I would assume to be a defensive advisor, if you will, maybe assistant head coach. We'll see what that is, but he is out as DC. Zach Core is in. It was reported actually by Phil Perry as well that the Patriots interviewed Browns safeties coach Ephraim Banda for one of the for the role, which is one of the two interviews that would satisfy the Rooney Rule because he is a minority. And Taylor, I know we were talking about this a little bit offline, but the Patriots have been pretty closed off as far as letting information leak out, but they did in fact satisfy this Rooney Rule to bring Zach Core in as the full-time DC. So thoughts on the move and also the way they were kind of able to go about it and in turn keep both guys while promoting Core and kind of, I guess, promoting Terrell Williams.
Yeah, all of this made sense. I think in the playoffs, we were on the road. I remember us talking about, okay, so Core is definitely going to be the DC next year, right? Yeah. Because even like if Terrell Williams was able to be a defensive coordinator in his full capacity, obviously last year missed a lot of time and was sidelined because of the pancreatic cancer. Thank God he is cancer-free, but we don't really have a lot of information when it comes to how much he's actually going to be able to do. But the defensive coordinator thing was going to be a projection either way. He only was the DC in a game for the first week against the Raiders, and it was really Zach Core from there on out. So it really just felt like, as you said, not a matter of if, but when. So made the most sense in the world. Terrell Williams, glad he gets to be, I don't know if it's a promotion that comes with a raise or anything like that. No clue. But we know Mike Vrabel is very loyal. So it's nice to see that someone that's been very good to him and so many players and people who've been around Terrell Williams have spoken about what he means off the field as well. So he gets to stick around. That's fantastic. Zach Core gets to continue to build. This is going to be my first season since I've been on the beat covering a team where the head coach and coordinators on offense and defense are the same. Jeremy Springer is the only coach I've seen. You're on mute, by the way. Jeremy Springer is the only coach I've seen in high capacity or coordinator capacity, obviously.
Can you hear me now?
On this team. Yeah, so I can hear you now. So that's pretty cool. A little bit of continuity on the defensive staff. Especially you only have two of your starters from last year that are probably going to hit the market or set to hit the market. So really good news for the Patriots defense there. And yeah, when the tweet came out from Tom Pelissero about Zach Core, I'm thinking, we haven't heard about minority candidates. So I know that Adam Schefter also interestingly mentioned that Zach Core was getting rid of the interim title, which I don't know that we ever got an announcement or anything saying that he was officially the interim defensive coordinator.
I don't know if we did.
Right. And I wasn't sure, okay, does being an interim and then being promoted mean that you can skirt the Rooney Rule? I had no idea. I looked it up really quickly. I don't think it does. But as we know now, they did actually up those. So tight-lipped organization. You really don't get a lot of news unless they want you to get news, which I'm fine with as the guy who likes covering football. Yeah. I'm so sorry. Actually, thank you. I meant prostate cancer. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say pancreatic.
Yeah, no, it's
for clarifying. Yeah. But yeah, so they did satisfy the Rooney Rule. And I'm hoping, and I think we know at this point that a lot of those meetings, especially when it's very clear that a coordinator is going to be, or someone is going to be promoted. Right. Ian Rappaport tweeted that it was very, very likely that it was going to be Zach Core. So I think it's understood that, yeah, we're going to bring you in, probably just speak to you about a potential different role on our coaching staff or just get you experience, whatever they have to tell them. I'm hoping that was a very transparent situation because we all knew that it was going to Zach Core. So they did what they were supposed to do, whether or not, it really satisfies the spirit of the Rooney Rule, as they did with Mike Vrabel last year, but deserved promotion for Zach Core. happy that Terrell Williams is staying on board. And when it comes to back to the run, Vinny DePalma, also congratulations to him. He is now the full-time inside linebackers coach after taking over those responsibilities last season when Zach Core was promoted. So it's not official that he will be promoted to the inside linebackers position, but that is the understanding. Mike Vrabel likes to hire within his coaching staff, which is how it should be done, period. It's like draft and develop for the coaching staff. You bring on young guys, hope that they can work under more experienced coaches, and as you lose guys or as those guys get promoted, you bring other people up. And when it comes to B.J. Edmonds, the former Southern Miss running backs coach, not sure what exactly it's going to be. Maybe he works under Tony Dews or something like that, but not someone I know a ton about. We do know that he had previous stops at Duke and Utah State. So, we'll see what capacity he actually serves. Kind of figure he'd probably be just an offensive assistant at this point.
Yeah, and the interview with Banda for the DC job is interesting to me because you talked about it. They satisfy the Rooney Rule, bringing in 2 minorities, and we know how the Rooney Rule works, and we've seen the ongoing litigation with Brian Flores and how a lot of them can be sham interviews, and it's just completely unfair to these guys. But when you look at it, the essence of the rule is getting more minority candidates in front of owners, in front of GMs, in front of head coaches to give them an opportunity to show their stuff and be like, this is what I do, what have you. And when you look at Banda specifically, he was in Cleveland when Mike Vrabel was in Cleveland last year, and Cleveland has a new head coach and a new defensive coordinator this year. So that could be hey, we have to do this, but we want to bring you in a different role. Let's call this a DC job, a DC interview. You help us, we help you type of thing, and maybe they bring him in on the defensive staff eventually. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. The right way is bringing guys in, gathering information, understanding what they can do for you. And then the wrong way is obviously what the Giants did a couple years ago when they interviewed Brian Flores after they already knew that they were going to hire Brian Daboll. And our friend Bill Belichick made the nice Texan mistake and blew the door open to what was already.
I still don't think that was an accident.
You think he did it on purpose?
Yes, I thought it at the time, and I do now. Because one thing about Belichick is his family, especially his dad, have been they've been on the right side of history and fairly progressive when it comes to black players in the league. I mean, there was that whole. We don't have to get into it. There was that whole part, in 2014 and some times on the Patriots staff where he, maybe wasn't as conscious as he should have been with some players' issues on the team. But I think that if he knew that someone was, especially someone who was on his staff, disrespecting him in that way, I felt at the time like Bill's not dumb. And he has one of the closest attention to detail of anybody in the coaching world. I refuse to believe that was an accident. I think he leaked it on purpose, kind of be like, hey, by the way,
use this.
You're getting screwed over here. So that's that's a very irrelevant, I guess, side tangent, but I still maintain that he did it on purpose.
No, but it's the offseason. That's when we can go on these type of side tangents. And I love that. I love that theory because my thought when it all happened was, it's Bill. He's getting old and everybody he's getting old and dumb now, just like he has towards the end of his Patriots tenure. And, he just made a mistake and clicked the first Brian in his phone. But that's a better theory. And again, if you're looking at him trying to screw up the league, which is what he's loved to do in the past, kind of needle the NFL.
Middle finger to Roger Goodell and the other owners.
I love it. Yeah. That's good stuff.
I said the other owners, his too, probably. Yep. Also, so if it's an internal candidate like the Gerard Mayo situation, I believe you need to notify the league ahead of time and say, I don't think it can be that season. I think it has to be at least a year in advance where you say, I think for Gerard, was it 2 years?
Yeah, it was baked into his contract
right.
a year or two before, so that you had to notify the league that there is a succession plan in place for this, where the Zach Core situation was, it was reactive towards Terrell Williams' cancer. So they kind of had to move that on the fly. So I don't think that they were able to do something like that. So in theory, yes, he's internal, but it wasn't by design that he was going to be hired as DC. So I think they did still have to, again, abide by the Rooney Rule. So that's our news. That's where we're at. We do have extension candidates. We do have cut candidates here to talk about. We're going to rifle through the big ones here coming up for the Patriots offseason. But before we get there, we got to talk about our friends over at Prize Picks, because as you all know, this episode and every single episode of Patriots Daily is powered by Prize Picks. Shoot your shot on Prize Picks right now and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. Prize Picks is now giving $50 in lineups when you sign up and play those first $5. They make every dunk, every dime, and every board that much more exciting. So don't miss the chance to get started on America's #1 app for sports picks. That is Prize Picks, and it's super simple to play. All you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you can cash in. You can pick from all sports, from basketball, baseball, hockey, UFC, soccer, college basketball, and more. And it's super simple right on the PrizePicks app. So download it today, create an account, and use code CLNS, and you will get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Taylor, I just saw what you put on the back end of the doc. We will definitely get to that on the other end. I was going to actually mention that. But we will do our extension candidates now. Talk about some guys, the Patriots, who heading into the final year of their contract are eligible to be extended by the team. And the first one, it may be fairly obvious to some, but we do have a take coming here on the pod that I want to tee up for us. And it's Christian Gonzalez, who was drafted by the Patriots in the first round 3 years ago, just finished his 3rd season. He is now eligible for a contract extension. Patriots picked up his 5th-year option, so he's under contract through or they have to pick up his option, or they can pick it up next season.
I'm
losing my mind.
I think it's next season.
It's heading into the 4th
season.
year.
They would have to do it, yeah.
So they can pick up the option, but they can also extend him, and he's become one.
And
of
that's usually how this goes. We're like, if it's a player that you're going to keep on, then you do. The 5th-year option is really just if you aren't sure about the player and you want 1 more year control, basically like a rookie prove-it deal.
Yep, correct. Okay, thank you. I got my years crossed there, but so he's eligible for the 5th-year option. He's eligible for an extension here. He's become one of the best cornerbacks in football. We've talked about it a little bit down the stretch of the year, how much he really turned a corner down the last 8-9 weeks of the year. Mike Vrabel talked about it after the Baltimore game, saying that Gonzo flipped the switch. Gonzo even said he knew what Vrabel was talking about. He wouldn't get into too much detail. But he was the Patriots' best player in Super Bowl 60, making a ton of big plays on the defensive side to kind of keep that Seattle offense at bay a little bit. But is this as obvious as you think it is, Taylor? Do you think they should just open the checkbook and, give him a blank check and let him write his extension? Or do you think the team should look at this a little bit more carefully than everybody seems like they should?
I think that there's an argument to be made that it makes sense to wait as long as you don't think that you're risking potentially upsetting Christian Gonzalez and his camp.
Okay.
Now, I think I was one of the first people who mentioned that, if you could get a Sauce Gardner type of trade for Christian Gonzalez, you should strongly consider it and potentially do it if he had continued to play at that kind of Ravens and before then trajectory, where it was impossible to deny that while a lot of his numbers were pretty similar to what he had done last season when he was voted a second-team All-Pro year before, his coverage grade was lower than a lot of those other stats. And I thought that's what the eye test said, where he was giving up a lot of easy completions. You didn't see him making a lot of plays on the ball that he had in seasons prior, especially in 2024. I thought you really saw him take a step forward and becoming a really disruptive player who didn't just stop people from catching passes, but actually took the ball away. And he had no interceptions, no forced fumbles at that point. So I thought it was very fair to say, look, if you're going to pay this guy like the highest paid cornerback in the NFL, he needs to not just shut guys down. He needs to take the ball away. Like that. And at the end of the day, it also is the NFL. Guys who are not better than Christian Gonzalez are going to end up making more money than Christian Gonzalez at some point. So, there's a fair argument to be made both sides. Now, since that Ravens game where he really struggled against Zay Flowers, that was one of the first games where I was like, or the last game rather, where I was like, I don't know, man. Like, it's not a great body type for him, but Gonzo is the kind of guy who can cover just about anybody. We've seen him lock down Tyreek Hill, although Zay Flowers is a very rare kind of athlete where he's small, but he's very twitchy and he plays pretty big. So with that being said, what he was able to do since then, as Mike Vrabel said and as Gonzalez acknowledged, was very impressive. I actually looked at the numbers going from week 1 to week 16. Obviously, he also missed some time when he was dealing with the hamstring injury. So I really went for rate stats. And then from week 17 into the Super Bowl, smaller sample size, but you can see just how much better he was against better competition. You could argue at points, especially in the Super Bowl. Completion rate allowed went from 48.5 in weeks 1 to 16, week 17 to the Super Bowl, 34.2. Another significant improvement you saw was his forced incompletion rate went from 13.1%, jumped to 21.1%. Passer rating allowed was already very good. He was top 10 in the league at 68.4, went even lower to 36.6 in the postseason. And his coverage grade, which again reflected that he wasn't really playing quite as well as numbers might have suggested, and also relative to his standards, had a 66.3 coverage grade before week 17. Then from week 17 to the playoffs, jumped to 86.0. That was top 10 in the NFL. So not only that, and this is for Gonzalez the entire season, had the lowest missed tackle rate among all corners in the NFL at 1.2%. The next closest player was Rock Ya-Sin, who I love and will always have a piece of my heart for the Lions, at 4.3%. It wasn't even close.
That's crazy.
Like I think it's fair to say that sometimes Christian Gonzalez, and I always compare him to Stephon Gilmore, is the kind of guy who can go up and fit the run and be very physical, but he's not always going to be like a Carlton Davis or a Marcus Jones where they're like looking for a fight and they are triggering very quickly. You don't always see that from Gonzo, but when he needs to and when he wants to, he definitely has that in him, and he very, very rarely misses tackles, as you can see. So that's another very important part of his game that I think needs to be acknowledged. And obviously, over that span and in the playoffs, he had a forced fumble and he had an interception that were huge in both of those games. So you can say, I think, if the team feels that Christian Gonzalez is fully bought in, and I think that was part of it, where Gonzo acknowledged that, like, he didn't really know, like some other players, why they were doing certain things in the beginning of the year, why Mike Vrabel wanted to do things the way that he was doing them, but he did acknowledge he was fully bought in, loves Mike Vrabel, and they've said nothing but good things about each other on both sides ever since. So it feels like the relationship has improved than what it was maybe when they were in the offseason and things felt a little weird with the hamstring, with how long Gonzo was missing time and all that.
Right.
If you as the team are saying, we believe that we are going to get the version of Gonzo we got to close the year, sign into the extension as soon as possible. I think he's earned it. He is clearly one of the best corners in the NFL. The only caveat would be, and also I think you have to have an understanding of he is going to be a guy who produces on the ball more often because he's been in the system for longer. Also a thing to acknowledge, when he struggled, missed time, and was in a different defense that progressed around him as the season went on. He wasn't the only one who wasn't playing his best ball. Even Marcus Jones, when he was kind of at the height of his season, was also having some busted coverages and things like that that are understandable when you're in a new defense. So I think, if they believe he's bought in, it's pretty clear cut. But if you're saying, I'd like to see a little bit more, I want to see how he performs in the offseason, where the past couple seasons, it's been fair to say that Gonzo doesn't really perform his best in training camp. And maybe that's something this coaching staff wants to see different. And they want to know, like, this dude's bought in. Maybe he's even someone they see as a potential captain because of his stature on the team. I don't know. We know he's not a super vocal guy. But hey,
he's even admitted that.
Harold Landry, right? Harold Landry doesn't talk too much either, but he kind of reflects it with what he does in his performance now he practices. So I think the only reason not to give him an extension before you really get into the offseason program is if you just want to see that buy-in a little longer and see, that consistency. But other than that, man, Gonzo turned it on in the biggest lights, in the biggest moments. And I think that says a lot. And he's someone that when you needed you guys to make plays, he was making a lot of those plays. So I don't think it's clear cut necessarily. But if we do see, why is it taking so long for Gonzo? I think it's just going to be the team saying we just want to know for a fact that he has bought into our system, which by all accounts, it sounds like he has from what we've heard from Vrabel and from Christian.
Yeah, I look at the way, again, it worked down the stretch for him, and I think that's what you needed to make the decision obvious this offseason. And I think, again, you said it off the top, but you don't want to piss him off. You don't want to nickel and dime him. You don't want his camp to have to fight the, we don't know yet. We're going to see. We want to see more. Like, I mean, he did. He turned it on when the lights were the brightest and when it mattered the most down the stretch of the season. And that's exactly what you want from a player. And we have talked about it over the last couple off seasons where, he's kind of skating through training camp and he's turning it on when he wants to. But when you're that good of a player, you're able to do that. And so,
and his standard is so high.
Right, exactly. And so while the injury thing was definitely a bump in the road, and the fact that he wasn't making a ton of plays on the football and was kind of playing just I don't want to say basic cornerback, but the first half of the season wasn't great compared to the second half, obviously. And I think, though, that when it's all said and done, and the way Vrabel and Gonzo have talked about each other over the last 6, 7, 8 weeks, where Vrabel said straight up, Christian's one of our best players. So, like, your best players get paid. Mike Vrabel knows that. You got to win with these guys. And I think that he did enough down the stretch to warrant the extension and to not play ball with this guy. So while I understand, your point where maybe you do want to see a little more, and frankly, if the front office isn't that comfortable, they should stick to their guns and they should understand, well, we're not comfortable for a certain reason, but at the end of the day, I do still think he ultimately did enough to earn the extension this summer.
And then two other things I would kind of, if you want to get nitpicky about it, is one, he does have an injury history. He had the shoulder injury his rookie year. He's had multiple concussions, which is not something you can just ignore. I think, what does he have, like 3 at this point?
I want to say at least 2. It might have
2
been
or 3. Yeah, like something. It's been multiple. I don't know. It's not been a ton, but they have happened. So we have to acknowledge that. And then he had the hamstring. So if you wait, maybe you just want to see if he stays healthy. But again, that feels like you're playing kind of a dangerous game. But if that's concern they have, it does exist. And is this a team that wants to make a cornerback the highest paid player at their position? I don't think it matters if you have great players, you pay them what they're worth.
Right.
But if you're saying we're about to put a lot of money into the defensive line, we already are. We got Barmore. We got Milton. We're paying Harold Landry a lot of money. You're going to pay a free agent. I don't think you're going to draft a rookie and expect them to have a big role. You're probably going to double dip at edge. So I think where you want to allocate your money and maybe concerns over Christian Gonzalez health-wise are the other things I think are fair to mention in the equation. Like Gonzo's not a guy who's been healthy his entire career, played, 3 straight years of dominant football throughout. There's been some, especially this season, some peaks and valleys. So I think it is mostly clear cut, but it's not 100%. I think there are fair things to just kind of throw out there and say, hey, if the team thinks they're significant, then this will be why if it does take a while. I just want to be as thorough as possible.
Totally. 2 concussions for Gonzo. He has two concussions at the end of each.
Was there a scare?
Maybe. This year was, I feel like, the scare because he ended up clearing it throughout the week.
Right. Yes.
He had a concussion against the Chargers and then played against Houston the following Sunday. And then the end of last year, he had a concussion against the Chargers in week 17, was inactive for their final game.
Definitely another game where they thought he had one and he came back.
There might have been, but
he left. But they didn't bring him back, so they were blowing somebody out, or they were already winning.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Vrabel even said he came and remember he spoke post-game, and we were like, oh, he must be fine. And he really doesn't.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So there was a scare. But 2 confirmed concussions for Gonzo, the shoulder, and obviously the hamstring this year. But speaking of players, Taylor, that may need to prove a little bit more before getting extended, wide receiver Kayshon Boutte, who came on strong this year, career high 6 touchdowns. I believe 400 or 500 yards receiving, 500-ish. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but continues to ascend throughout the course of his career. Obviously had the tough start to his rookie year and has become, one of Drake May's go-to guys when they need a guy to have it play in the deep portion of the field. But given that the wide receiver room down the end of the season, specifically against the Seahawks, was not really, a positive or one of their better position rooms. It's still a need, whether they assess it in the draft, whether they assess it in free agency. Kayshon heading into his final year of his rookie contract. Has he done enough to warrant an extension, or do you think you play this thing out and wait to see what happens until after 2026?
I hate to say it because Kayshon has taken those steps so consistently, and it felt like he did everything they asked him to do this season. So I would love to reward that. And I think this is a team that wants to reward homegrown players who do everything right, and especially when they show consistent growth. But I still am not sure what Kayshon is, because what we know of him right now is that he's one of the most efficient deep threats in the NFL. Like he was, when I looked at the numbers, it's kind of insane. So he had the highest catch rate, the 5th most yards per route, the most receiving touchdowns, tied for the most, tied with Zay Flowers for the highest passer rating on deep targets at 141.4, and he had 0 drops. Like that's insane. He was very, very good in the deep part of the field, and it passed the eye test. We all knew it. But he wasn't very high in terms of the league in deep targets. I think he was in like the 20s or something like that. So he wasn't a high volume target deep or at all. And that's the thing that I want to see if he can do in 2026, because when he was targeted intermediate, and when he was targeted short, he had no targets behind the line of scrimmage. They didn't give him any screens or anything like that, which of course he's more of a downfield threat. But in any other level of the field, he had a sub 90 passer rating when targeted. That's not good. Like that's not even really acceptable.
Right.
So I think that he can do better. Like we have seen him have some success on digs, but we've also seen times where he struggles to separate, which is fine. But does Drake trust him enough where he'll give him more opportunities in the intermediate part of the field and things like that? And also, can Kayshon maybe take over for a Matt Collins, be more of a Z, where you are kind of fed more of those design targets specifically for you? I thought as a blocker, he wasn't as good as he's been in the past. He was solid, but I expect more from him, I'll say. I don't know what that's attributed to exactly, but I'd like to see more flexibility. I want to see if he's a guy who can handle more targets, and I want to see him be more consistent in other parts of the field, whether that's slants, which he was really good at in college. And I don't even think it's all because of him. I think that the offense doesn't really give him a lot of slants. He's not targeted on a lot of crossing routes or some of those opportunities that give him chances in space. So I would love to see the trajectory continue, and I want to see Kayshawn continue to be a part of this offense. But it's weird because he kind of is a one-trick pony at this point.
Right.
And although he's excellent at that thing, and it's something that's huge, like I'm talking about giving Alec Pierce a bag because of how good he is deep. But I think he's a much more well-rounded player, and he's bigger. Another weird thing about Kayshawn's evaluation is like he's not even 6 feet tall.
Right.
For a deep threat, you wouldn't, or for a deep threat who doesn't separate very well, like it doesn't make sense.
He should be 6'3". Like
right. Like he has the skill set of a guy who's just big and very linear in a different type of body. So I do not think he's an extension candidate at this point. But if we go through training camp and we're like, oh, like Drake is locked in on Kayshon Boutte, he feels like a legit number 1 or number 2, then we're talking. But right now, I think he's like a really, really good number 3 because of what he does. But that's about it. And I think that Kayshon would want to show that he can be more than that, either throughout the summer or if it does take the season. So, unless he has a great, great summer and then a really strong start to the season, a la Marcus Jones, then I could see it potentially. But for right now, I just don't think we really know enough of what he can be in the NFL and how he can be in year 2 with Josh McDaniels. That's another big part of it. Maybe his role expands as he understands the playbook more, as he understands what Josh McDaniels and Drake want in the system more. So still room for growth, but that growth and need for it does give me pause when it comes to calling him an extension candidate.
Yeah, we talked about like if they were going to try and nickel and dime Christian Gonzalez and trying to get a team friendly deal, whatever. If Kayshawn and his camp, they start to have these conversations, he's like, look, I want to be here. I'll take this amount of money and it's going to work in the Patriots' favor. And he can be, take number 2 or high number 3 type money. And the Patriots want to keep him around at that cost. Then I think that's a way to start in the offseason. But I'm with you as far as still going to training camp. And like last year, we went into it and Amit gives us shit for us all the time offline saying, you guys all were ready to cut Kayshon Boutte. And he came in and, he made the team and had a good year. But at the time, we didn't know what his role was going to be. And he did come in.
He wasn't even this kind of deep threat in camp. We were talking about Trevion Henderson as the best deep threat they had in training camp.
Yep.
And then it was like, oh, okay, Kayshawn just going to catch. Like, again, I understand the outside perception of how we see Kayshawn. And
totally,
it's like, you guys are such haters. But it's like, no, like we're at training camp every year. We see more than the average fan who can't go to all these things. It doesn't have that opportunity. Right. And it's, as I always say, it is disingenuous and unfair to Kayshawn to act like we always knew he was going to be what he is. The guy's grown. He's been different things in his career. And I think that's very cool. And one of the best things about following him and one of my favorite parts of covering this team, period. And I've told him that to his face. It's been awesome to see his growth. But again, need to see that next step. And Kayshawn's confident. I don't think he's going to take a number 3 deal or even a number 2 deal. Exactly. I think he's going to say, no, I can be a number 1.
Right.
And I want to prove it. And hopefully he does that this year.
That's kind of where
next year. Is it this year yet? Now, obviously, the new league year hasn't started yet, so technically
it has not. It's still next year, technically March 11th, I believe. That's when we'll be on and we'll be waiting for our Milton Williams type of deal on a live stream.
No tag for Alec Pierce. Tag for Alec Pierce.
That's what we got to wait on too. But yeah, same boat on Kayshawn. I don't want to say he hasn't earned it yet, but I think you still need to see more, especially given the state of the wide receiver room heading into next season. Last big one here is Mike Onwenu heading into the final year of that 3-year, $57 million deal that the team signed him to in the Gerard Mayo offseason. Looking at Spotrac right now, it looks like he's a $25 million cap hit in 2026. So I've seen some places.
Not happening.
I was going to say, I've seen some places float him as a cut candidate. I know that at least looking at this year, that there's probably going to be a restructure in his future. But would you extend Onwenu? Did he show you enough this year to continue making him the long-term solution at right guard for this team?
Yeah, and just to put it in perspective, I'm going to look up 2026 and what the highest cap number is for guards.
Okay.
He would have – do they not have him as a – that's so annoying. Do they not have him as a right guard? That's dumb. Well, the highest would be Chris Lindstrom at 26.25. And what'd you say it was again for
26? 26 this year.
Yeah. Like I don't think that's even smart. You're going to want to spread it out. So,
or 25, excuse me, but
25. Yeah, that's it. That's got to change. Especially, I think this was one of his best seasons. When you look at the numbers, it was like his second best as a pass blocker. Like, go figure. This is one of the first times he's actually got to stay in one position.
Right.
And it's also, I don't think he's ever been able to stay at one place and also play next to the same people. The closest thing was David Andrews, but right tackle, we've seen so many different guys. So, I mean, poor dude, but the first year where he really had two guys that were stable next to him, had one of his best seasons. 1,344 snaps was the most he's had in his career. So this is the longest season he's played. He had the fourth highest pass blocking grade. Among guards. The fourth highest pass blocking grade, the ninth lowest pressure rate allowed, and the sixth lowest knockdown rate allowed, which is sacks and hits and times that, Drake May actually ends up on the ground. So pass protection wise, he is still a top 10 player and has been pretty consistently. At right tackle, sometimes you see the understandable dips. For right guard, he very rarely is outside of like the top 12. So that kind of continuity, I think you want to stick with. And also, you have plenty of holes you need to fix. I don't think you want to make a new one by cutting Mike Nwenu, because then what are you doing? Who's replacing him? Like, you're creating a hole that's not necessary. I think you saw him and Morgan Moses really became a threat as run blockers later in the year, which this is really weird. When I looked at PFF, they have him and Morgan Moses as elite zone blockers, but pretty average gap blockers, which I didn't totally understand, to be honest. I know they were better on outside zone than a lot of people would probably think just looking at them.
Right.
But I did think also anytime they were able to combo and just move people backwards, you got a lot of really good push. But I also think it's fair to say that Nwenu was not the type of run blocker he's been in other years of his career. Continued to be a good pass protector. I thought he was, by his standards, fine and okay as a run blocker. So maybe you're thinking, okay, another year next to Morgan Moses, he'll be fine. They'll just continue to get better. I'd like to see maybe if he could shed some weight, because there were times where, and this is always a conversation with him, and look, his body is his body. He's never going to be a super flexible guy, but there were moments where I would have liked to see him just be a little bit lighter on his feet. I don't know if that's feasible. It's just something I noticed when looking at some of the tape. But yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to extend him. You don't want to create another hole. He played good football for you. He's been a great ambassador for the franchise in terms of, like, you don't hear a peep out of Mike Nwenu.
Right.
And while there's been flux in his play, there's been flux in where he's played and where he's lined up. So another year at right guard, just give him some more continuity. We're going to talk about that for another position. But I think especially on that right side, you want to keep things going. Take some of that, get some more cap space by extending him. That one to me feels as close to a no-brainer as they probably have when it comes to decisions to make this offseason.
Yeah, I think so too. It obviously saves you this year on the cap number. You extend it out, make him happy for another couple seasons. And I think the only, that critique of the weight has been something that's kind of carried quite literally with him for, his entire career. But he's played through it, and he continues to work hard and be a dependable right guard. So I'm with you. I think that one's pretty easy as well.
The dependability is huge. Also, we got to mention, like, the dude doesn't miss games.
No, he doesn't. Yeah,
and
he's always out there.
It flies under the radar, I feel like, for him, because the play's kind of been in flux. You always talk about him, but I feel like there's usually like some big headline and but that dude plays and is rarely off the field. And I think you also want to reward somebody for doing that.
That's absolutely massive too at offensive line, because we've seen the Patriots struggle with that in the past. As the 2 years ago or 3, whatever it was, they started like 11 or 12 different combinations in 17 games. But most of the time it stayed Mike Nwenu. Whether he was at right tackle, at right guard, that was different, but he was always out there in the lineup. So I agree. That is that's massive for someone to be able to to post like that. So last couple here. These are kind of quick hitters, not as I guess not as big names, if you will. I know everyone loves their Demario Douglas, but Pop Douglas, Christian Ellis also heading into last year, their deals. Christian Ellis signed the 2-year deal last year. He was an RFA. The Patriots matched it from the Raiders last offseason. So now he's going to a final year. And then Pop heading into the final year of his rookie contract. What do you make of those two guys? Do you think they should be extension candidates, or do you think you let it play out and see what happens?
Christian Ellis, not quite. But he's another Marcus Jones type, where if he takes a step forward to the point where you can keep him on the field consistently, and maybe he gets better as a run defender and is more consistent in coverage, I would be surprised if he gets himself a modest little deal and they say, hey, we'll give you probably more than you might make on the market, because he's starting to become closer to Caden Ellis, where he just does a little bit of everything. He doesn't really line up as an edge rusher, but he's impactful as a blitzer, as a run defender, and in coverage. So he had the second most hits among linebackers in the NFL. Devin Lloyd was the only player who had more. Lloyd had 9. Christian Ellis had 6 on the season. He also had one of the highest run stop rates in the playoffs among all players. He was third at 13.9, which was almost double what he had in the regular season. It was only 7%. So he really did turn it on. Although also fair to mention that part of that was in a rotational role. Jack Gibbons was really more of their base linebacker on some of those heavier sets that they faced. And in coverage, so he's kind of boomer bust in coverage. I will say that. He wasn't targeted downfield very often, but he missed a lot of tackles. He had the 10th highest missed tackle rate among linebackers in coverage. That's not great. You need to be better in that department. But he also had the 4th highest forced incompletion rate, and the 8th most, target for the 8th most pass breakups with 4. So he's competitive in coverage, and that's something. But I think you just want to see the consistency from Christian Ellis. And he said that he really flipped the switch last season once he was like, I don't really care if I make mistakes. If I do, I'm going to improve and make a play later in the game. He proved that more often than not, where when he did make mistakes, he did something later that made up for it. And there were some games where he really didn't have any complaints from Christian Ellis, and he really just had a positive impact. So if he can be consistent and you see him take a step forward in camp, that translates to the season. I think when you get to, a few weeks into the year, maybe you see something for him. But I think it would have to be a pretty significant jump, which to Christian Ellis' credit, he's made every year.
Yes.
Obviously 2024 was rough, but they had no coaching, and he's still, the dude was fighting his tail off out there. So I don't think that Christian Ellis is an extension candidate yet, but somebody who would be on my radar. Demario Douglas, I'm not sure. We know he's a role player. I think it would be surprising if he took a step forward to be a bigger impact player or anything like a starter, because I just don't think he's a great fit for Drake. Honestly, we know he's best as a downfield threat. He only had 9 deep targets this year, and I just don't know how comfortable Drake is throwing to someone his size consistently, especially downfield. It became a storyline in training camp, and during the regular season, there were the 2 plays against the Saints where we're thinking, oh shit, maybe this is
open.
How we're going to get. But we didn't really see that consistently. Not saying it's Pop's fault, because he was open a lot of times, he wasn't targeted, but that's become the story of his career. And I'm not saying it's all fair, but at some point it's like, okay, like now what? When do those opportunities become times he's actually getting the ball? For one reason or another, it doesn't happen consistently enough. Maybe this is an offseason where we see him take another step, like I said with Christian Ellis, but I just don't really see it. So I also think that the draft is a place where you can get a pretty significant upgrade in the slot and someone who is a little bit bigger while also being a separator and giving you some yards after the catch. And also, frankly, the fact that Pop wasn't able to be as effective after the catch was disappointing. Yes. He is still good, but he's not someone, despite his speed, who you think of as really being a triple or a home run threat. You're thinking he's going to consistently hit like doubles, but you're not really scared of him after the catch. He's going to make someone look silly, and then he's probably going to fall down or jump forward.
Or get tackled. Yeah, right.
And that's what it is, which, that's fine. But year 3, it's not really a Kayshawn situation where he took such a big step forward. Although this was one of Pop's better years of his career, set some career highs, especially in terms of efficiency. But yeah, I think it would take a huge jump from him to consider him an extension candidate at this point.
Yeah, they need to, even though it was much better than years past, they still need to retool this wide receiver room heading into 26, and which we'll talk about in the next section here with cut candidates. Like, I don't think anybody is essentially earned the right to be on this team in 2026. As crazy as that sounds, given how good they were one of the better offenses in general, at least for points per game wise this year. I do think they need to continue to look to upgrade and help Drake May as much as possible at wide receiver. And so you look at Booty, you look at Douglas, as good as they've been, especially given the fact that they were both 6th-round picks and they're heading into their 4th seasons and we're at least talking about them being extension candidates. Frankly, like, that's good enough for me. They've done what they were kind of asked to do when getting here. But I think they still need to prove a little bit more and then potentially see what goes on heading into their free agent offseason next season. So we'll get to a couple of cut candidates here after the break, but before we do, you guys know what time it is. It's meat time here on the program. So let's talk about our friends over at Omaha Steaks. They got juicy burgers, big steaks, and whether you live for a Sunday dinner and a slow-cooked all-day flavor of a pot roast or a smash burger on the grill with slow-cooked all-day flavor, crispy edges. The slow-cooked all-day flavor is the pot roast, but regardless of whatever meat you choose, you can get all of it at Omaha Steaks. You can even go breakfast with steak and eggs for breakfast, or you can do that for lunch or dinner as well. No matter what you want, Omaha Steaks has the high-protein, snack-grabbing, pre-marinated steak tips for all of your events or all of your meals. And you can celebrate President's Day with their exceptional handcrafted flavor and convenience over at Omaha Steaks. They have an exclusive lineup of USDA certified tender steaks, gourmet burgers, versatile chicken, pork, seafood, and more. And it all gets delivered right to your door. So don't wait. Get in on Omaha Steaks today. Go to the website and you'll get 50% off the world's best everyday protein at omahasteaks.com. You get 50% off site-wide during their President's Day sale. And also, you can add an extra $35 off the top right now using promo code Patriots at checkout. Again, that's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $35 off with promo code Patriots at checkout. Again, terms apply. See site for details, omahasteaks.com.
Can I ask you a question that doesn't have to do with anything?
Sure.
Just looking at Twitter, what is Jason McIntyre? What is he?
Jason McIntyre, he's on the Herd now.
But like, why? Who is he? Because every time I feel like he talks, he's saying something very uninformed.
He's been in sports media for a little while. Fox Sports guy. I know the Herd has like shuffled Cowherd's like headline go-to people. Right. It was like Kristen Leahy for a while, and then Joy Taylor was there. I don't know. I think
insider or something. Like, does he have sources?
I don't think he's an insider. I think he's more
like just a sports guy.
Just a sports guy, and I think he was last on the totem pole. Not last. I don't want to put the guy down, but I think he just kind of ended up being like, oh, okay, well, we'll just put J-Mac on the other side of Cowherd. So, but yeah, he does have some hot takes for sure on some random things.
It wasn't even bad what he said. I think it was just that like Mike Evans is going to sniff a Super Bowl, which that wasn't bad. But like, I feel like every time I see him, I'm like, what is he doing talking about football? But,
yeah,
okay, no disrespect, I guess. I just
he talks about everything.
I don't know where he came from.
Yeah. All right, let's do cut candidates. The first one, Jason McIntyre. Would you cut Jason McIntyre? No. Let's continue with the wide receiver conversation because a couple of guys, Stephon Diggs, Mac Hollins, were the premier ads for New England in the room this season and played their part, did well, but obviously wasn't enough to win the Super Bowl last week. So when you look at both of these guys, Diggs and Hollins, do you project them to be on the Patriots roster come week one, or do you think we are in for a complete rebuild at wide receiver?
It's tough. Stephon Diggs, it's just that's so much money. Like the guarantee is where I think you kind of need to make a choice. Obviously, you have to make a decision, but that might be where they say, okay, we probably move on because like they're not going to extend him, right? Like right. I don't think he, as good of a season as he had, specifically regular season, I don't think it was so good that you're saying he's someone who's going to be here for a couple of years. So that gives me pause. I think you maybe keep Mac Hollins around at least for training camp because I think you do still want some continuity in terms of the guys who are considered leaders in that room. And I also think that I would be interested to see what Mac Hollins could be with another year with Drake May. I think Hollins, at some point, is what he is. But I also think the comfortability that Drake had throwing to him is significant. But if you think that, like Romeo Doubs, I think if you add him, that maybe changes things up. Like I said, if you think Kayshon Boutte is someone who could slide to more of a Mac Hollins type role, I think that's fine. But I also think in the draft, you can get guys who do what Stephon Diggs did to a certain degree, and not to the same level, because Stephon Diggs, while he wasn't as explosive as he used to be, still a very nuanced route runner and still one of the best catchers in the NFL. I think he led the NFL in catch rate. It's something like 80. What was it? 80%? I'm going to look at my notes. It was something stupid. 82.5%. That was the highest in the NFL. The second was Khalil Shakir at 81.3. And he was one of the best short targets in the NFL and highly efficient when he was targeted downfield. So there is that. But I also think you could definitely upgrade because both guys are going to be 32 next year. You can't have two starting receivers or two of your top receivers at 32 years old. That's not fair to your young quarterback. So they need to make an upgrade at least one spot. If you're able to get a Romeo Doubs or, hopefully an Alec Pierce. And I know Doubs, I do want to acknowledge because I keep saying his name. He did have a suspension and for conduct detrimental to the team. That's a red flag. We do need to kind of.
Was that this year or 2 years ago?
It was this year. I can't say for sure, honestly. You know better than I would.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Their receiver room got crowded pretty quick. I mean, they drafted guys. Obviously, Matthew Golden. They have Wicks. They have Christian Watson, obviously. So they kind of have like a
Golden
bunch.
didn't even do anything. So, like, I don't know what was going on.
Yeah, I know.
We'll dive more into that when we get into free agency. And
Yeah. But I like Dobbs. I've always liked him in Green Bay, and I know I understand the suspension thing, but maybe it's water under the bridge. But
right. So if you're able to add a free agent, I think that most likely affects Matt Collins because there's no really good slot guys, I think, that suit them really well. But also, it doesn't even have to be necessarily drafting a slot receiver. There's a lot of pretty good tight ends in this class where if you want to go back to a primarily 2 tight end offense, I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference when it comes to what value they bring on the field for a really athletic tight end who's uncoverable against slots and one of those real mismatch problems. Because why do you like Diggs? You like him because he's got a great catch radius and because he can create separation at the top of routes. I think there's good tight ends who could probably do that. So it's I don't think it's a clean-cut thing with Stephon Diggs. Like, I still think he brings value if you bring him back. I just don't like the idea of having, again, 2 32-year-olds who have such prominent roles in your offense when I think the draft has a lot of guys who could fill those similar roles. And also, you'd hope that Kyle Williams takes a step forward. Like, in a perfect world, Kyle Williams becomes Stephon Diggs, I think. So that's another thing we take into consideration. So I think Stephon Diggs probably doesn't make it to the offseason program. But Matt Collins, I could see, again, sticking around while you draft a potential guy who can replace him at some point, either during the summer, and then you do move on for him before week 1 and just say, we're going to stick with this young guy, while also relying on a Kayshon Boutte and maybe, a Kyle Williams again, and then hoping a young guy can play better for you. So Stephon Diggs, I don't think makes it. Matt Collins, maybe, but I think there's also a decent chance that he's replaced by a potentially younger player.
Yeah, I'm with you. As good as Diggs was, I think his time is up here. They signed him to the 3-year deal. I don't think they ever expected him to last all 3 years. But, the one that he gave them, 1,000 yards, good enough for it. Helps them go to the Super Bowl. Helps them with Drake May's continued production. But, with the cap number, with, the off-field stuff, again, we'll see what happens. We don't have to get into it. He's got another court date coming up in April. We'll see where that all plays out. But there was just, there were some things even off the field this year, even in the offseason with, the boat video and things like that. Just like little, it was small, but things came up. And I think that if you can upgrade at the position, you have to do that. And I think Diggs, unfortunately, becomes a casualty. I know what you said, we'll talk about Dobbs in another video, but I was looking it up anyway. And his suspension came at the beginning of last season. Or 2 seasons ago, the 2024 season. That was before they drafted Golden. It had to do with frustrations over his involvement in the passing game. Later said that he was dealing with some things off the field, could have done a better job communicating. Ended up coming back, had 2 touchdowns in his first game back. He's obviously been great in the last year and a half. I will say 3 concussions, 2 have already come.
He has the torpedo helmet?
Yeah, and he's had 2 since adding the Guardian cap. Yeah.
Ooh.
So that's an issue. That's one that you might need to be a little bit more.
Good, though.
He is so good. I love him. He is good.
That might be the only reason he hits the market, to be honest.
Exactly.
Like,
so,
that's the only reason, of course. But yeah, sorry. I don't want to talk out of my butt. I still need to do some more research. But he's a good player. That I know.
Yeah. All right. We will move on to the interior offensive line here. Garrett Bradbury, Jared Wilson. Bradbury becomes a cut candidate going into his final year. Signed a 2-year deal this offseason. Was great for what they asked him to do. But as we talked about yesterday on the crossover, Elliott Wolf and the Patriots have kind of looked at Jared Wilson as their long-term center answer. Bradbury's obviously on the older side. Wilson is one that, again, we batted around yesterday. But if he's going to be your center long-term, are you going to play him at 2 years at guard and then go into his 3rd season and try and develop him, or do you do it now? What's your answer as we sit here on February 18th? What do you think? I guess I'll ask a 2-parter. Will they cut Bradbury and move Wilson? And do you think that should be the move they make?
I think it depends on how they feel. Like, some of these, I can give my opinion, but it really only matters what the team thinks.
Fair.
If you think that Jared Wilson can add enough weight and get strong enough that he can be a functional NFL guard, then I think you go with continuity. Because I don't think Garrett Bradbury's perfect, but you think Will Campbell's going to get better. That should make Jared Wilson better. And if Jared Wilson's better, I think that helps the run game enough. Because, I mean, to be fair, also, Jared Wilson has a lot of things he needs to work on technique-wise. Mm-hmm. He got caught lunging a lot. He was off balance a lot. Like, he still needs to take a pretty significant step in his development, whether he plays guard or center. And you also have to think about the fact that he played center for that 1 year at Georgia, yes, but last offseason, and this is partially because he's a rookie, I think they just didn't want to overwhelm him by asking him to play 2 positions, but he didn't really play any center. So I know that Ellie Wolf said the plan was for him to play center. I'm not saying he can't, But again, if you as the team think, oh, he had a whole offseason where he was training for the draft. If we get him on a plan, he can come back bigger, stronger, and really hold his own. And then the technique stuff will come with time. In that case, I'm fine. If you don't think that, and you're like, no, he is a center at the NFL level, then I don't think you have a choice but to cut Garrett Bradbury. And it's unfortunate because he did exceed expectations. He was far from perfect, though. Right. And I will say that while he wasn't, getting pushed back as often as we thought, and I don't think his value can be reflected in the stats by any means. I think the amount of things he did is just cleaning up, and the amount of pressures he prevented or times he helped other people that he will not get credit for was enormous. Every game you're seeing him do like 2 or 3 snaps where it's like, oh, damn, like that's what a veteran center looks like. Right. You'll see something coming a mile away, or do what Andrews used to do where you see him straining and dying slowly, and it might not look perfect, but he prevents what could have been a much worse play. So I want to acknowledge that for Garrett Bradbury. But when you do look at the numbers and how exactly he played, he had I'm looking at Jared Wilson's numbers. Garrett Bradbury, there we go. The most pressures allowed in the NFL among centers. Of course, he played in the postseason, so that is part of it. But he had 29, which was tied for the 4th most among centers, so not great. And he also was one of the lowest run blocking centers in the NFL, and I think that's something that you really did see on the tape. Had some moments, but more often than not, I think that he struggled to get push, or sometimes even missed blocks at the second level, which is where you would think he would thrive. So he's not above someone that you could replace. Also, have to add Tyler Linderbaum into this conversation. If you think Jared Wilson can stay at left guard and Tyler Linderbaum hits the market, that's someone who impacts your run game. And whether or not Jared Wilson gets better, Tyler Linderbaum's going to be a difference maker up there. And then from Linderbaum down on that right side, You're looking pretty damn good. So there's some different permutations to this situation where, again, just to recap, if you think Jared Wilson can stick at guard, it's either going to be Bradbury or Tyler Linderbaum. If he hits the market, you maintain continuity, and then that left side can just continue to get better with 2 seasons of growing together. But if you do think that Jared Wilson is not someone who is going to be a long-term NFL guard, then yeah, you got to move on. You want to get him started in that process earlier than not. So if he has to take his lumps at center, learn some lessons, he can do it sooner rather than later and become the potentially elite center that he has the talent to be. And then you deal with left guard as you have to. And Ben Brown's in this equation too. Yeah. I don't know if they think that that's someone where they wouldn't mind if he was a guy who started a lot of games for them one way or another. But again, you have so many holes right now on the team. I don't think you can really address guard until like the 4th round, and you're not trying to start a 4th rounder anyway. So another part of this, David Edwards is going to be on the market, the Bills left guard. I think he's the kind of guy that would fit really well in their kind of system. If you did want to move Jared Wilson, but again, a lot of moving parts.
There's a lot of moving parts in this equation.
A lot. So I'm sorry to drown everybody in information, but summarize. Bottom line, I think that, Jared Wilson's best position is at center, but also we did not see the finished product of Jared Wilson as an NFL specimen. So if he can get bigger and the team thinks that he can, anchor down a little bit better than he did as a rookie and be stronger, generate more movement at the point of attack, then for sure I'm all for maintaining continuity. But if the team thinks that, we thought it was valiant what he did at left guard, but he's going to be our center of the future, you have to move on from Garrett Bradbury.
Yeah, I think and I'm glad you mentioned Linderbaum. I think that's the kind of tipping point. If they can go get him at center, then you make sure Jared Wilson can be your left guard, because Linderbaum is the answer if he does hit the market and if they can make it happen. If they don't, then that's where it gets interesting. Bradbury signed the 2-year, just under $10 million deal last year, but his cap hit is around $7 million this year versus the 4.6-ish it was last year. So gets a little bit more expensive this year. You wonder if
gets older also, and Mike Vrabel says he wants to get younger, cheaper, faster.
Exactly.
Linderbaum wouldn't be cheaper. Wilson wants to be cheaper, but you get younger and faster if you were able to upgrade.
Exactly. So he's entering his age 31 season. So as much as the continuity would help, I wonder if they end up bringing Bradbury back or not. He was, again, the consummate pro. He was great. He's going to continue if he does get cut the good guy award curse, because he won it again this year. And I feel like every single season that person ends up getting, leaving the team, which is kind of funny. But if I wasn't betting man, I am a betting man. But if I had to bet on it, Garrett Bradbury, I don't think he's going to be on the team next year.
Also, I will say the last thing on Garrett Bradbury, one of my favorite people to cover. I remember I went up and spoke and asked him a question once, and he started asking me about myself, which doesn't happen a lot, which understandably, what do we matter? But
what do they care, right?
Personal questions very kindly, and I was I was so thrown and kind of was, I think I accidentally lied about my age at one point. I said I was older than I was just because I was so thrown. But yeah, Garrett Bradbury is an awesome.
Yeah, man, I'm 40.
I'm a man. I'm 40. But yeah,
right.
asking on Garrett Bradbury, I wanted to get through that. He was a fantastic player to cover. Whatever happens, if he did move on, I would wish him.
Yep, he's the man. All right, last. Well, I guess we got two more quick ones here. But Anthony Jennings, another good solid season for them. But they need help at edge. You keeping him? You moving him? What are your thoughts on Anthony Jennings heading into this year? Because he was another one of those Gerard Mayo era extension candidates that had worked out from that little group, but they still want to get better on the outside. So what do you make of Jennings?
Another guy on this list that brings me back to that Mike Vrabel quote towards the end of the year where he's like, we're going to have to make some tough decisions. And, he has all these great relationships. But, obviously Diggs is in that mix because he was a leader on the team, clearly meant a lot to a lot of those guys, especially in the wide receiver room. Garrett Bradbury is in that mix. And Anthony Jennings is too. I mean, we didn't think he was going to be a good scheme fit. And granted, this scheme was much more flexible than I really thought it was going to be, which was good to see. And they definitely accommodated Anthony Jennings. And he's still one of the best run-stopping edge defenders in the NFL. When I actually looked up the numbers, he had the sixth highest run-stop rate among edge defenders while playing the fewest snaps for him since 2022. But he still had also a career-high 4 sacks, 8 hits, and he actually had one of the higher pressure rates of his career. So he was pretty good as an edge rusher, of course, benefiting somewhat from the people around him as well. But he also did have a career high, 17% missed tackle rate. I thought that was something you did see at times where more, and you've always seen this, where he's a bigger guy. So more explosive backs can kind of have their way. If they are really explosive to the edge, they can outpace him. Sometimes more jittery guys can catch him off guard. But Anthony Jennings, you know what he is at this point. But I also think you can get more athletic. I want them to be like the Seahawks. I want them to be like the Chargers, where they have 3 or 4 edge rushers who can line up all over the place, can threaten guards, tackles. They're explosive. They can be those pass rush threats, but they're also not slouches in the run game. And maybe if the young guys are, you see the potential, but they need to be more consistent, kind of like an Elijah Ponder type. So as much as I like Anthony Jennings, if I'm looking at this depth chart, you're thinking, okay, if they carry a similar amount to last season, Harold Landry is going to be here. It's either Caleb Chason or probably another veteran. Then I think you continue to work with Elijah Ponder because he showed promise. Probably give Braden Swinson another shot too. But if he doesn't work out, you really do need that other guy, I think, behind him to have some explosive edge rushing ability. So I think this probably is the year where you move on from Anthony Jennings, maybe give him an opportunity to latch on elsewhere. Or, I don't know how much value he's going to have on the open market necessarily as a run-first defender. So I wouldn't be surprised to be someone who is around in camp and then make the decision then. And in fact, I think that's probably more likely what's going to happen because of his role. You can let him hit the market, but, is anybody going to be banging down the door for his services? I'm not sure. They couldn't trade him last year. I think it's an interesting situation. So he's still under contract. He's a good player.
Yeah.
He was the one of their game captains towards the end of the year. They clearly love Anthony Jennings, and it's very cool to see him get his flowers for someone who, like Mike Nwenu, has just done his job, man. He doesn't talk a lot, but he does what you ask him to do, and he's had an impact since he was a rookie. Was it since he was a rookie? Yeah, he flashed as a rookie, but then really turned it on later in his career. So I think he's a cut candidate, but I would say probably later into the offseason, probably once you get down to really making those tough roster cuts.
I feel like this is, if we were to play buy, sell, or hold with these guys, thinking stock-wise, buy would obviously be the extension, and then the cut would be the sell. I feel like this is just let the contract play out. You don't necessarily need to make a move unless, again, they do end up making a major splash, whether it's free agency, whether it's the draft at the position, there's not enough room to keep him. But I think they at least keep him throughout the offseason program, maybe float him on the market like they did last year. And you look at, they got next to nothing for Kyle Duggar and Keon White, but they end up getting something in return. So maybe you try it with Jennings and you hold on to him to the last point. Maybe you keep him, maybe you move him at that point. But I don't think this is an offseason cut candidate for Jennings. I'm with you that I think, you hold it out as long as possible, see where the position room is at the end of August, and then you kind of make your decision there. But did enough this year. Again, like you said, from being someone we thought they could cut to being on the trade market, not having necessarily a role to being a game captain at the end of the year was massive for him. So like,
also led all players in run stops in the playoffs. That was another little fun fact there.
There you go. So
I had his creeping suspicion, but yeah, he did that shit.
Yeah, he still played. I mean, he played great football for being in the position he was in. So unfortunately, just not. I don't want to say not good enough because I don't mean it that way, but they still need to get better at the position, and he could be, someone.
They need to get more explosive at the edge, and that's been true since last season.
Yep. All right, final one. Who's QB2 next year, Taylor? Is it Josh Dobbs or is it Tommy DeVito? Because Dobbs signed a 2-year deal. He's entering his contract year. DeVito is going to be a free agent this offseason. Elliott Wolf in the team. I feel like a lot of these teams nowadays have a philosophy of drafting, quarterbacks more often than not. You saw it with Drake and Joe Milton a couple years ago. You add at the position no matter what. So where do you think the Patriots are at quarterback-wise heading into next year, and who do you think is ultimately backing up Drake May?
Go back to the Mike Vrabel comment. Younger, cheaper, faster. Tommy DeVito is a restricted free agent. You can bring let me just make sure it's restricted and not exclusive rights. That always gets me.
I believe he's restricted, but you can
too. Yep, restricted. Okay, just wanted to be absolutely sure. Yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense to keep Tommy DeVito. The biggest thing with Joshua Dobbs, because Drake May is going into his 3rd season, I don't think he needs the veteran in the room anymore necessarily.
Yeah.
The biggest advantage you get from Joshua Dobbs is that he actually spent 2024 on the 49ers, and the Patriots are playing the NFC West this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they potentially try to. Did they play the NFC West, or is it just the? Oh my God, I'm crashing it, Brendan.
Seahawks. They played the.
Oh no, it's the NFC. It's the NFC North, but they do play the.
They played Seattle because they're a first place team.
Exactly. So that's his experience on other teams is very valuable. But at the same time, they know each other. I think as long as Dobbs isn't on the team that they're going against, Drake could text him and be like, "Hey, what do you think of this defense?" That happens in the league. So, I think it makes a lot more sense to go with the Tommy DeVito. And then draft somebody, because we know Elliott Wolf has said he wants to draft a quarterback probably every 2 years, develop those guys, especially with Josh McDaniels. Like, that guy is an invaluable piece if you're talking about developing quarterbacks potentially sell high as they get later on in their career. So this feels like a Tommy DeVito re-sign, and then, give Joshua Dobbs a chance to be a QB2 elsewhere.
All right, we did have actually one more that I forgot about that we threw around before we started recording. And I put it out there because I wrote a piece about the Patriots' potential free agents, contract casualties, and retirement candidates this offseason. And Hunter Henry was one of the cut candidates I listed. Now, this wasn't necessarily my idea. I was using our friends at Over the Cap to determine what, who could potentially be contract casualties more so than cut candidates, which I guess it's the same thing, but it's kind of a different when you're playing with the salary cap. Hunter Henry, you would save $8.5 million if you cut the tight end. Now, we've talked about Patriots using free agency to get better at the position. We've obviously talked about them drafting guys. Is it crazy to think that Hunter Henry could be released? He's obviously a captain and has been, a solid security blanket for Drake May and has been a leader. But is this one of those hard conversations that Mike Vrabel should have to have, or do you think they still stick around with Hunter Henry?
I think you stick with Hunter Henry.
Okay.
It must be acknowledged that he has slowed down late in the past couple of years. That's where you see the injuries start to pile up. And go figure, he's on the older side in his career, but he's a captain. Another guy who's clearly invaluable to this team just as a person, knows the Josh McDaniels offense, someone who's going to be invaluable when they're going to draft a tight end. They can't not. Is going to be invaluable. And they also have to sign somebody. So whatever it is, you might bring Austin Hooper back, but I know we've spoken about it. You'd like to upgrade like a Charlie Kohler from the Ravens. It's not somebody who's probably going to get a lot of pub, but he's the best in-line blocking tight end in this free agent class. Probably not going to cost you a ton of money, and just someone who I think does make a difference in the run game. So either way, someone's going to have to learn the Josh McDaniels offense. No better steward than Hunter Henry. And there's not a lot of guys you can really sign. You're going to have some extensions and things like that, but you can fudge with the cap. I don't think Hunter Henry is the kind of guy where you need to make a move on him to create cap space. You do that with Mike Nwenu. You do that by maybe shedding Stephon Diggs. There are other options for you to make money. And again, maybe 2 or 3 players you're thinking this offseason that are going to make a lot of money, and one of them is probably Christian Gonzalez. Right. So no, I don't really see a real. I think it's like you said with whose contract we just let it play out. Just like Anthony Jennings, where you just let things happen. Hunter obviously has much more roster security, but you're not going to extend him because this
right.
Probably is going to be Hunter's last season, just given the way that we've kind of seen things go later in the year. Not quite as potent as he is early. Like early, he was crazy explosive.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Like he was very much like the focus of the offense until they started spreading the ball around a little bit more. So Hunter Henry's safe. I don't think you touch his contract. Just let that one play out.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, not an extension candidate, and the $8.5 million is what it is. I don't think you're going to save a ton if you do extend him an extra year and spread that over 2 years. It's not like there's a crazy backloaded hit at the end of it. Like 8.5, you can eat. You have good cap space here still. So,
and he had one of the best years of his career, which I just stupidly didn't even mention. But like, he's been a Pro Bowler, to be very honest.
Exactly. So, while he is on the back end of the career, like you said, I still think he's a valuable enough piece to the offense, to the organization, where you let it play out. If he wants to come back again the next year, then you sign him to another 1-year deal and go from there. But for now, I think let this one play out at tight end. So that is our look at extension and cut candidates. So that's going to do it here for us today. However, couple housekeeping notes to close off the show with. Number one, we did ask for mailbag questions. We got so many of them, because it is the offseason and everyone's ready to roll. So thank you guys that we're going to push that to basically an entire mailbag show tomorrow afternoon. So keep it locked in here. We will answer all of your questions. Taylor's also headed to the Combine. Tell the folks what's going on there. I know the plans are still kind of in the works, but what are we looking at for Combine content? When do you leave? When do you come home? And what are we trying to do ahead of the 2026 Combine?
Yeah, so we'll be there Monday to Thursday, and not leaving early on Thursday. I made sure we will be there all Thursday. So we will have extensive coverage, of course. And this is going to be our first time actually having a chair on Radio Row. Okay. I think the first year, Ahmed and I just kind of walked around, and then last year we parked out at Alex Bart's table. We parked out at 98.5 when we could, and obviously we tried to return the favor this year at the draft or at the Super Bowl. So many events over the past over this kind of time span. But yeah, we will be at the draft, Combine. Oh my God, we will be at the Combine. We will have a table. It's going to be so much fun.
Let's go.
So stay tuned for that, and obviously we'll probably be doing shows. You want to come? Are you coming?
I was gonna say I got my own nonsense going on, so I will be at home, but we will set something up like this. I'm sure we'll do a dual camera thing. You'll guys have your set, and I'll be here hosting shows when I can. So make sure you're logging in here next week. We will have a ton of coverage from the Combine with Taylor Kyles there. Fred, you going on PU?
I didn't know. I mean, I would. No one's ever. I say hi to Fred at games every once in a while. He's always really nice to me.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. I'd love. How has Evan not told me about this? What the hell, dude?
Evan's keeping the walls up like he always does. He's defending the
horse. Defend the wall. I get it.
Yeah. All right. Last one here. Some sad news that we did want to share regarding our media colleague and former Patriots quarterback Brian Hoyer. I retweeted this earlier, but he posted it. His little brother, unfortunately, lost his wife, Carissa, suddenly last week. She leaves behind, I'm reading off of Hoyer's tweet, 4 little girls, and his brother, who is, I'm trying to find his name, but his other brother, Matthew, put together a GoFundMe fundraiser. I retweeted the tweet already from Hoyer. We can retweet it. Taylor did as well. So go to our pages, check that out. If you can donate anything, please go do so. Obviously, our hearts, our prayers here at CLNS and on the show specifically are with Brian Hoyer's brother, Brett, and his 4 daughters, who unfortunately suddenly lost their mother and their wife at age 36. So just terribly sad. And obviously, if you can, but if you can't support, do it. If you can retweet and spread the word on this, there's a GoFundMe set up for the Hoyer family. So just tough news to close the show, but wanted to promote it in case anyone can do anything there to help. So that is our show. So again, Taylor will be at the Combine next week. We will have another show tomorrow with a mailbag. We'll get into some prospects as well. So a ton of coverage here. We don't sleep on CLNS on Patriots Press Pass. So make sure, as always. Yeah, exactly. So rate, review, subscribe, get some eye patches under there if you can, Taylor, for more content.
I need to get my new pair of goddamn glasses, bro.
Yeah, there you go. I
can't see shit. I look like shit.
No, we're good. We're rolling. We're ready to rock. But yeah, you got to get the glasses before Combine Week. You can't be squinting across the Lucas Oil Stadium next week. Come on.
I thought you were gonna say, yeah, you do look like shit. I was like, hey, bro, I appreciate the honesty.
Oh, you look good.
For real. I want to be able to enjoy the prospects to the fullest extent. I can't do that when I'm looking like
the amount of times where we're walking through Radio Row and Taylor's squinting. It's like, is that so-and-so? I'm like, nope, that's not them at all.
And it's worse because then, like, if the person notices I'm looking at them, it's just some random person squinting at them. Oh, my God. Like, oh, somebody called me out for that. Where were we? We were at one of the nights where we had gone out to a bar, and I was like trying to read something against Crow. Like, she was like, "Are you okay?" I was just like, I was not looking at you. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, hopefully Taylor gets new glasses before the Combine. He'll be out there, a ton of coverage. I'll be home, but we'll get together here on Patriots Daily, and maybe Taylor walks around, the Lucas Oil Stadium, the convention center like that to try and make sure he can get some guests. But
scaring all the Joes.
Exactly. At any rate, we'll be back tomorrow. Keep it here on Patriots Press Pass. Oh, as always, a ton of Patriots content. Taylor is going out Monday. So Taylor and Amit. So make sure you keep it here. Anyway, good stuff. Taylor, we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other, and we will see you soon. Peace out, everyone.
Bye-bye.